Hey guys, so we're talking about identity. And I don't know if you thought about this much since we last got together, but you have to have a concept of who you are. That is your identity, right? You have to have a picture who you see yourself as, who you see yourself becoming. It has to be. It's the baseline for how you decide what you will say yes to, what you'll say no to, what you'll tolerate, how you react to threats or disappointments. Just think about it like this. You have a teenage boy, he sees himself as a screw up because maybe he's heard those messages from other people, but the more he hears them, the more he starts to believe them. The more he starts to believe them, the more he starts to step into that role, right? Because hopeless screw ups don't have healthy relationships, they don't work consistently, they can't, he fits the role because he believes that is his destiny. He can only become that thing. If you take a young man, same young man, fill his head with messages that he can become a responsible person. He's going to add value to people's lives one day. That's going to be huge because he's going to look for opportunities and keep his eyes peeled to step into that role. And as time goes on, he's going to look more and more and more like that person, right? So, here's the thing. Unfortunately, most of us become adults with kind of like confused ideas about who we should be, right? They got all these mixed voices competing, parents, the way we were raised, teachers, coaches, people on TV, culture is huge, peer culture is huge. And so we kind of come into adulthood, and some of the ideas we have about who we should be are just like full of errors. Some of them are people we could be, but maybe we shouldn't be. It's just a lot of dangerous paths that we can go down because of those things. We can also waste a lot of time experimenting and coming up short, not being satisfied with who we're becoming. The truth is, we really need to have a strong concept of who we are and who we should be, right? And how to get from where we are to who we should be. We have to have that. And I don't know what the voices in your head are like, right? Parents, social media, I don't know. But if you're a believer, this is what God says about your identity as a believer. This is from 1 Peter 2:9. He says, "You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light." In other words, if you're a believer, let's describe who you are for a moment. Let's put some terms to it, right? You're the son of royalty. Actually, yeah, you come from a royal lineage, and you're someone that your father wants in his royal household. And he went out of his way to make this possible. And at the same time as you have this royal lineage and this amazing potential, you're also a man who's gone his own way more than one time, rebelled against his father, gone against his glory. And, you were in the dark about a lot of things. You had some wrong ideas, you had some faithless ideas, and he has gone out of his way and shown that he's both just and gracious, and he's got you, right? You were in the dark about some things, but now you're in the light about so many things, and you're going to be in the light about even more things as you go, right? The world doesn't have terms for that. So you have to be careful about listening to what the world says about you, the terms that they have, the messages that are being sent to you out there and to everybody else, right? The world doesn't even have terms for someone who is both just and gracious. To the world, that's an impossibility, right? But so you really have to be careful about the voices that you allow in, because the world's voices don't even have terminology for who you are. So what good does it do to listen to that influence, right? That doesn't stop them from competing for your attention. They absolutely will do that. But what it means is you have to be a gatekeeper for what you allow yourself to hear from the world. Many of the people in the world that have messages for your identity, they're not invested in you. Let's remember that. They're not. They're just voices that are clamoring for attention. And the more attention, the more hits, the more likes, the happier they are for 5 minutes, and then they forget about you. They don't care. They just want to know that you listened and you heard or supported for a moment, right? They don't invest themselves in you. They have no accountability to you or really anybody else. Like whether they were right or not, they don't have any accountability. They're not going to answer for it. If you go down the path of believing what they say about you, whether it's people on social media or whether it's people from your past, the kids on the playground, it doesn't really matter. If they speak messages about your identity and your worth, and you begin to view those things with faith and start to act on them, and then you come back years later and say, wow, you guys totally made me think that I was a worthless person and there was no hope for me. If you can even find them, okay, they're going to look at you and go like, well, it's not my fault what you believe. That's your problem. They don't care. They're not accountable, right? And the other thing, just a reminder, they don't even have the right terms to describe who you are because they have no other experience, right? There's no other situation in history where the God of the universe cared about his creation so much that even though they rebelled against him, he was willing to come to where they were and say, I want you to be with me. I want you to place your trust back in me. And in exchange for your trust, you have my approval. That's all I need. You can't make up for all the things you've ever done. You can't undo them. You can't go back in time, but I want your trust and I want you to come with me and I want you to accept the purpose I have for your life and step into it. Like there's no other situation for that. The only terms the world has to describe people, identity is like you're either a good person or you're a bad person, right? You're either good enough or you're not good enough, right? They don't have terms for a redeemed son, right? They don't have that, okay? That's not something they're used to. I'm a redeemed son, right? I'm accepted by my father, the king, even though I fall short. Like I'm a man who was in the darkness, but now I'm in the light. They don't know what to do with that. So they can't be trusted to describe your identity. They can't. And so what that means is you really have to be a gatekeeper for those voices that you allow in that speak to your identity. It's a very practical thing. It seems like kind of a small, almost a petty thing, but you have to keep track of what kind of influences are coming through in, past your eyes, past your ears, and your hearing. Because truth is, the more you hear a message, whether you buy into it at first or not, the more you hear something, the more likely you are to believe it, especially where your worth and value is concerned. The more you hear messages that are negative about your worth, that point to shame, that point to, hopelessness, the more likely you are to believe those things. I don't care who you are. It's too easy to believe those things because of, our past, guilt, our stains, the things that we've actually done that were actually bad. You have to gatekeep, right? And what that means is, number one, just being aware, where are your influences coming in? What are the voices? Where do they pop up? Is it through your phone? Is it through scrolling? Is it, is it pornography? Is it relationships that you maintain that really don't add that much to your life? What is it, right? And recognizing like some of those voices may be harmful voices and they're not doing you any good, and you should probably shut them down. The other thing that you need to realize, and this is real maturity, okay? This is like level 10. If you get to here, this is amazing. But recognizing that neutral voices are almost as bad as negative voices, okay? And here's why. Because you have only so much airspace in your life, and airtime, airspace, mental space, whatever you want to call it. You have only so many hours in the day. And by allowing your airspace to get filled up with just like kind of neutral voices, they aren't really like positive, they aren't really like negative, they're just neutral. What that means is they take the place of the voices that you actually need to hear, and they sap out, sap your energy, sap time, and you have to understand that you actually need to hear repeated truth about your identity. You have to. You have to. We're vulnerable without it. You have to be able to say, you know what? I'm actually weak, and I get vulnerable if I go long periods of time without hearing again and again and again, who am I really? How does God define me? How does he describe me? That can be through other people. It has to be through other people sometimes. It has to be through your own pursuit of God's word. It has to be through regular, prayer. It has to be. Without that, we're in trouble. And it's too easy for neutral messages, neutral voices, just things that don't really do anything for us spiritually or healthily, to just like sap that time and leave us wondering why we're kind of feeling like we're starving to death. Okay. So maturity is practically starts with asking yourself, like, where are the places I am allowing my identity to be spoken about? And where am I like hearing that and not even realizing it? Okay. Number two is, where are the places that I like really need to build something into my life where I hear that repetition about who I am? What do I need to add in? What little discipline needs to be started, so that I know I'm going to hear true things about myself again and again and again? Where am I going to do that? So that's your challenge for this weekend. I hope that this isn't fire hosing you, but it's a huge topic and we're just getting started with it.